Hello, everyone. Welcome to Costume Confidential. We talk here about art of costume design and all the fun details behind the scenes. And we have today Matthew Price, who worked on a fabulous show, Black Mirror. Hello, Matthew.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you. I think you were in London, I'm in LA, right?
Very true.
Well, I'm so excited to talk to you because I love the show. It's so crazy. Black Mirror. And your episode, how did you even come to do your episode? I mean, have you worked on the project before or?
Yeah, I'd worked with the director Toby Haynes 3 or 4 times previously, and I'd done maybe 3 or 4 episodes leading up to Callister, and so they very kindly asked me to come on to this crazy sci-fi one. Same hair and makeup, same DOP. There are a few of us that had worked together before actually, so it was a nice kind of tight team actually.
That's awesome because that, to me it's always so when it's so cohesive and you know each other, there's like a shorthand. And it shows so well, I think, in costume and of course the lighting, but like how the hair and makeup, I really noticed here in this show too, how fabulous us. I mean, the space cowboys and the punk rocker were like off the chart. Because this is a second, like a part two, right? Of an
That's
episode
right.
two. There was another one in another season.
There was, yeah, there was one made. I think it was in 2017, I believe. I think it was series 4 that I didn't design. So this was, the follow up to that, as it were. And so, an interesting project to take on for many reasons. Obviously, one of it being a follow up, and two, I didn't design the original. So there were a lot of kind of areas to start in that sense. I actually knew the supervisor from the original episode, so I'd spoken with her a little bit about the project and how they went about it, and I had access to some of the original crew uniforms that really helped me actually, just to see how they were constructed, the types of fabrics, and that was kind of a really good starting point for me.
Yeah, because I mean, you're already coming into characters that were a little bit developed, right? So this is interesting to me because you kind of are between worlds in this show because you have the real world, you have this crew here, the fleet crew. How did you approach that? You still have to have the same characters. You want to make sure that they feel who they are psychologically. And
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when I came into it, the new ship had already been sort of part designed and mostly built, so I
okay.
could see the markup in the new ship design. Actually, that was really really helpful. And as I say, I had access to some of the original costumes, so I decided that maybe what would be a good point of call would be to take some of the techniques from the original episode and put those into the sort of the new kind of contemporized sort of uniforms, as it were. Some of the shoulders on the original crew uniforms they used a technique called plastisol printing, where they printed out these kind of like almost like plastic kind of shoulder guards, basically.
3D printing or what kind of printing? 3D printing?
Yeah, it's like a sort of screen printing in a way, actually. You can see them here, just actually on the side of the shoulders there. So we redesigned kind of the lines and the graphics for that. And I used the same company that they used in the original episode, just to kind of have a sort of lineage going through the outfits. And we sort of put some of the logos as well that we used in the original outfits into these costumes. But we actually started by making in neoprene, which the original costumes were made in from the original episode. But after we'd made those prototypes, we quickly realized it felt too retro, actually. It felt too close to the original. So we sort of shifted attack then, really, which was quite last minute because we only had about 2 weeks left by the
Oh my
time we hit
God.
that point on a 7 week prep. So it was kind of a
Oh my
bit
God.
crazy, you know?
Well, TV schedule is crazy. I don't even know how you build all this stuff and then test and paint and like
Yeah, yeah.
it,
Well,
it,
we didn't really have that much. I mean, we managed to test a little bit. We managed to test some of the sort of the uniform pop colors you see underneath, but we
right.
didn't manage to test anything else, to be honest. It was really just in the moment and trusting instinct and knowing Stefan, the DOP, and obviously knowing Toby, the director, and just kind of trusting the, your instinct in a way. But we ended up, yeah, with about 2 weeks to go, we didn't really have that many options. So we found like a high street walking trouser, which was just a shape,
I
just a
know
fitting
that
shape.
was so interesting. Yeah. So what was it? Why did you?
Well, it was like a kind of, it basically was the perfect tone. And when it was brought to me, I was like, that is the tone we're after. It's the perfect shade. It looks a bit darker on screen in a way. Yeah, but it's a bit more of a sort of a bluey grey in a way.
Yes,
And
almost a little bit like teal.
yeah, a little bit actually, a little bit. We found these other fabric samples, but they were in Italy and we couldn't get them in time basically. So one of the makers came up with a sort of sort of said on the fly saying, "How many of these trousers could we actually get?" And I was like, "Oh my god, are you actually thinking what I'm thinking?" And so we bought every pair in the
Fabulous.
UK. We just bought hundreds of pairs. So we
Oh
bought
my
every pair basically. And that's where we cut the suits from. We recut the trousers, made our own trousers, recut some of the jackets. And that was the base really. And then we just added our details like pin tucks and everything else that went into it. This walking trouser kind of saved the day for us.
You know what, mother of invention. Sometimes you just have to do it. This is,
Yeah,
really
exactly, exactly.
resourceful. And, I love having a team that's really creative that helps you. It's like, okay, what about if we do this?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, at the time, I think it gave a few people a few heart attacks. But actually, once we started, it really started to work straight away. Actually, and it kind of because the neoprene is so thick and quite bulky, it started to just really thin out the silhouettes in a way, and it just started to work as soon as we sort of went down that route. Really, the other thing we did is that we brought in a games designer, illustrator, a guy called Callum, who was fantastic, and I mean, he works in film and TV as well, but his forte was games design. And so I really wanted to bring in someone that I could present, the illustration through to Charlie and to Toby and to have that sort of games aesthetic really. And he really helped sort of develop that style through the drawings that we made of.
Also knowing the director, so you're bringing something that already they trust you, which is great. They trust your taste. And were they happy like right away?
Yeah, once we'd actually hit this mark with this fabric, and once we started working with Callum, and we really found that we really started to find the aesthetic that we wanted, then yeah, it felt very natural then actually. And then that last 2 week process was obviously a crazy 2 weeks, but we actually had a bit of a buffer because they ended up shooting some of the real life scenes in the office. So we actually ended up having about 3 weeks to make the crew uniforms, and that was before we didn't have to shoot on the marine outfits or any of the sort of the more kind of avatar gameplay straight away. So we had a bit more time to develop those characters in a way.
Nice. And I like how everything, when you're working with production designer, the sets, and the fleet, I think that worked out really well. I think the lighting and the shine on the fabric, it's really beautiful together. I think there's a lot of,
Oh, good. I'm glad you like that.
uh,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we took a few shapes. We lifted a few shapes out of the spaceship basically, and they went into some of the armor on the Space Marines. In fact, they kind of ran through all the costumes really because the world is designed by one hand. So it was imperative that it felt like that.
you're right, one mind.
It's one mind. It's
It's
one
one
mind and one
mind.
design. So it must look sort of cohesive, really. So yeah.
I mean, the only place he doesn't have control is the real world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
And that was really cool too, how you reflected that, because you have to take the characters through the all different kind of transformation of the different worlds, the real world. It felt very grounded.
Yeah, that was the point of it really, and there's a lot of saturated colours within the gaming world, and so I sort of suck those out of the real world to give it that sort of grounded feel. Really, obviously we'd met the gaming characters before, but we'd met some of the real world characters before, so there was a bit of repetition in some of the styling and some of the items within that, but the palette was very sort of contained, really.
But I love to me, how you reflect the characters, because they are so different in different worlds. I mean, we have Nanette, who is kind of, sheepish when she's in the real world, but then she's almost a superhero when she's, in the gaming world. So it's really interesting. And I love that contrast. I mean, I think that's what's so cool about costumes.
Yeah, exactly. We treated it like two separate characters, which it was because they didn't know about each other within the episode in that sense for a while. So, like you say, in the real world, she was slightly more bagged out and a bit more sheepish, and the silhouette was very different. And then in the gaming world, we did sort of pay a little homage to Alien and sort of Ripley and that style really. So we kind of really slicked it out for that. So.
And then how was your process bringing the other characters, the gaming? That's the third world that we want to kind of explore in a way. So it's more fantastical, right?
Yeah, exactly. A lot of trial and error in that sense because it was sort of like, how far can we push these characters in that sense? And again, a lot of development came out of, working with the illustrator Callum and myself and just kind of playing with shapes and putting kind of mannequins together and seeing kind of how far we could sort of push these guys in a way.
I love this guy. He's my favorite. Mohawk. I mean, it's so fabulous. And I love your use of color too. It just, is that something that you guys talked about with the director?
Very much so. And this character, Mohawk, was the last character on camera. So I think we were on a 6 week shoot. So he came in with the prep period. He was in week 13 on the very last day, I believe it was. And so there was a lot of sort of trial and error with him, with Lucy Kane doing the hair and makeup and the tattoos. And So it's a very collaborative sort of character in that sense. I mean, they all are. And we had early versions of this that were kind of less saturated, less poppy. We found the trousers first, which were sort of we printed the trousers out basically, that fabric and that particular tone. And then once we found those, we knew that we could really sort of start to push him a little bit. And Toby just wanted these characters super heightened, really. Like the people playing these characters at home were, adding on those little bits every week. The more they play, so they sort of needed to feel like they had those add-on elements, really.
But tell me, how did you, I mean, was there like the idea of somebody who was punk rock? Was it written in a script or that was your idea?
No, it was written actually. It was written as Space Cowboy. It was written as Space Punk, and he was down as Space Ninja. And then it was just sort of a lot of different sort of iterations of these characters, really. And for example, the cowboy character was he went through many sort of like gunslinger kind of versions, really, and we ended
Okay.
up with him. And the punk guy, again, he was sort of less colourful at the start and maybe a bit more of a sort of traditional punk in that sense. And then we realized we really need to sort of pump some color into this and just sort of kind of go for it in that sense.
I love it. I think in that lighting too, working with the lighting, I think it really kind of pops.
Yeah, it worked out well. We were using the same fabrics as we used for the green, for example. For the top on him was the same fabrics as we used for the crew uniform underneath. And then we used sort of leather throughout all of these. Actually, leather was a particular fabric that one of the makers suggested early on, like a stretch leather. And that ended up going through pretty much all of these characters, actually, as sort of that was the continuity, really, of fabric, as well as the shape continuity as well, because there's a lot of repeat shapes within all these characters, actually.
And again, I love the use of color. I mean, I'm a colorist. The purple cape, I mean, I love. Can it be like Prince?
Yeah, I mean that was talked about as well, actually. Yeah, yeah. Funny enough, I mean, it's funny, isn't it? How sometimes you go back to these sort of pop artists or fashion designers or whatever it is. It's so they all come into conversation, don't they? And we were working with a brilliant sort of cos prop artist for this. So all of these bits you see, the armor bits, were all sculpted. They were so most of these artists were body cast, like the old traditional way body cast, and then it was sculpted in clay, and then it was cast out and painted. So because we didn't really have time to kind of do some of the other techniques, we kind of went a bit old school with the techniques, really. But actually, that gave us control in the end, so it worked out very well.
I love it. I love it because it's, again, I don't know, there's something organic too, even though it's space. There's something that, I mean,
Yeah,
there's textures, and I love your combinations of fabrics as well, and the chain. I mean, there's just a lot of cool detail that even in a dark environment, because you always have to think as a designer, I'm going to be in the dark environment. Where am I going to be? And you saw so much, which I love. And I mean, the makeup too is so fast.
she's brilliant. We've worked together sort of, I think we've done 5 episodes together on Black Mirror now. So we have a shorthand, as it were. And you're really working out these characters last minute, as I'm sure you know about. The set wasn't really even kind of signed off until quite last minute, and then suddenly it was going to be a sandstorm, and then it was all these sort of things, really. So you're all kind of working in those moments, aren't you? It's sort of a little bit of instinct towards the end in some ways, but I'm very happy with how they sat together in the end.
But I mean, you got to work with the game world, which was cool. Pixie is so cool. She's my alter ego.
And mine as well, I think. Yeah.
I mean, how did you? The pink is so good. I mean, and the hair and just the gun.
I mean, everything was just getting larger and larger, and sort of the gun was getting larger, it was getting pinker, and we were sort of like, wow, this has just gone crazy. And then Lucy was like, I've got this idea for the hair, and we were like, yeah. I mean, she just needed to feel as vibrant as possible, really, and she really matched the character as well. The actress playing it, she really embodied it. But the pinks was very hard to find, I must say, to sort of try and because we were making so last minute, we were still painting her on the morning of the shoot, so she was still a little bit damp, actually, when we put her on camera. And then she went straight into stunts and that sort of thing. But we had about 4 or 5 of these suits. There were last minute add-ons like these headphones, and then Toby was like, can we paint those bright pink as well? And when we started her, she wasn't as vibrant as this. It just kept materializing over the weeks as we were putting it together, basically. A lot of fun, yeah.
Yeah, and it's those shows sometimes tend to be so masculine, in a way, I think, because it's like space and it's like, the suit. It's so fun to kind of break that stuff up with these. I think it's just such a layered show. It's so fun because there's just so many different things to look at. I mean, she's like a what, motocross meets roller blader. I mean, she's just so good.
That's a new description. Yeah, I'll take that. Yeah. Charlie writes great female characters as well, obviously. So it's sort of, I think you can feel that across this piece as well. And there was a bit sort of anime in there, like Japanese anime, that was like early references, really. We were looking at like Tokyo street photography, for example. you know, those sorts of vibrant colors in sort of the everyday clothing in Tokyo. So that was also put into there as well before we hit the illustration stage, you know.
I love the t-shirt that you put on. I mean, it's super cute. Whatever she wakes up from the game.
Oh yeah, that actually was. I must give credit to Toby, the director, on that, because we were talking about different. You know, we were going to make something up and design the
Right.
graphic for it, and he's just said, "How about fuck yeah?" I was like, I think that could probably work actually. Yeah. So we just got the graphics guys to do different versions of that, and that's where that T-shirt came from. Actually, that was Toby's idea. I'm glad you noticed.
But it was interesting because you know, the other gamers, you don't see a lot of them, but it's just a very cool, quick pops that you got to do. Tell me a little bit more about those guys because that was fun.
You know, they needed to leave a mark, really, I suppose. So some of the gamers you meet towards the end, actually, in the spaceships, in the space battles, for example, a couple of those are actually actors from an episode called Demon 79. They were the lead actors in a different Black Mirror episodes. And about 3 days before we were shooting these spaceship battle scenes, they said, we're going to bring back Papa, we're going to bring back Anjana, who are these, you know, these great actors. Tommy Innett's quite a famous sort of like online personality guy. So they brought in these sort of like gaming personalities, basically. I think we had 2 days to build it all. So we just built these top halves sort of in like 48 hours. And these are actually homages to their characters in Demon 79, which is actually a 1970s based Black Mirror episode. So we sort of took their 70s outfits and flipped them into sort of space outfits, basically. That was actually her chest piece there was just repainted from a different character because we actually just fully ran out of time. I think that's Pixies, actually. Yeah, I think we just had to repaint it and then kind of like design around it, basically, because we were out of time. And that armor there was repainted from one of the Space Marines. But in a way, we were kind of like, you know, it's the same world, it's the same hand designing it. So why wouldn't why wouldn't they have the same shapes in there, you know?
So you know what? We have to think of our toes always as costume designers. You know, things are thrown at us so last minute these days.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Again, what I love about your work, you really stay in a world. You are immersed in that world, and you know you have all the cues of that world, you know, very clear. So you know you're there and what's happening. And there's a lot of whimsy and humor, which is great. Yeah.
Yeah. But always with Charlie's work. Yeah, there's just the humor's amazing, isn't it?
I love the boss, James Walton, played by Jimmy Simpson, who I adore. He is just so much fun.
Yeah, he's amazing, and he was fully up for doing the castaway outfit as well. There was no questions. He was like, show more, show more.
Was he so buffed? Is he buffed like that? I was like, wow, Jimmy, he like really looked good.
Yeah, I think he got himself in shape. Yeah, he was actually.
There was a lot of blue in there. Was there a certain thing that you, what was the blue?
Yeah, there was because it was the wormish thing that he eats in the end was kind of full of this sort of blue gunk, and so we kind of wanted to put that across the costume in a way. And again, there are many different versions of this that were kind of more dressed up. One of them, he was like fully covered, almost in like a bear skin, like an alien bear skin, and then it just kept getting less and less and less and less. And Toby, the director, he was just like, I think you need to give me even less than this. And so he was like, I think I need to have a little flash of of a cheek in there. And Jimmy he didn't hesitate at all. So it's like he's kind of, he's finding these creatures and he's made his costume or what's left of his outfit out of these sort of strange alien creatures on this blue planet, really.
And I love the texture. Again, it's all about textures, the sleek textures, kind of the organic texture here, whatever Earth he is on or planet. This is really cool because there's like so many worlds colliding here.
Yeah, exactly. And we're not really sure how long he's been there in a way. But actually, the boots became quite a thing on this because it was quite a dangerous sort of terrain, which we shot in North Wales in this sort of old, sort of disused quarry. And so the boots had to be really, really practical. So we actually ended up kind of like wrapping safety boots, and that's what he's wearing, and sort of dyeing all the fur and and doing that process as well. But actually, underneath there, he's got pretty practical footwear on.
Well done. We can't tell. And so now we have Jimmy in his little loincloth, and then we have our little space girl coming in, and then we have the two suits coming in.
The white suits, yeah.
Yeah, tell me about them.
They're like a sort of homage to 2000, Space Odyssey, basically. And they're the default suits. So when you join the game, that's the suits that you would join the game in before you can sort of like buy any add-ons. And we were looking at kind of like retro and sort of vintage space suits, and then looking at Space Odyssey, the film, obviously. So there's like elements of that put in. And then we love the sort of the retro kind of almost like 1960s, I suppose, space helmet in real life. So we just thought, let's have a go at making one of these. And we had, again, we had much more color in these outfits, but actually once we made them up in white leather and we were going to paint them very different colors, I sort of presented them in white and I was like, I really think white's the color for this with a little touch of blue in it. What was nice is that you can see all the sort of the making lines in these outfits because there's nothing to hide them in a way. That's what I really liked about them as well.
I mean, the hoods are crazy.
They're not that practical, I must say. They were sort of like the helmets came off pretty fast because we didn't have that long to develop them, and they were sort of like you couldn't really breathe in them that well, I must say. But I mean, when can you in helmets?
Right. I mean, this kind of stuff, you need the air tubes, right? And all that other stuff that it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah. We didn't have time to develop that, so they sort of plonked them on and did the scene, and then but it worked for the sort of the comedy in it, really, to be honest.
I love the comedy. I think Jimmy says namaste. I mean, it's just like, hi, here I am. I actually did a movie with him, beginning of his career many years ago, called Loser.
Oh yeah, yeah.
A little bit like Clueless, but they were the clueless boys.
No, he's fabulous, and he really made that part his own, really, in this latest episode. And you could just tell he was having so much fun with it as well. Playing all these sort of multitude of characters. He really dived into it. It's great.
Tell me a little bit more about working like with the ensemble cast and how are the actors when you developing dog costumes? Do you have them in the fittings? Are they trying things on?
No, definitely, it was a big development stage, and Kristen had just come off the Penguin, and I think she'd had like no break whatsoever, as far as I could tell. So she was quite tired off the back of that shoot, and she very kindly gave us so much time, because making the marine outfits, for example, was a big make for us, the black marine outfits, and they were stretch leather. They needed to give a little bit for stunts, but they were super fitted, So we had multiple fittings, and we had multiple fittings for the default, the white ones as well. I think the marine was probably the largest build from our side. It had the armor going over. You can see here the clay makes for the chest, and then it had 12 other separate elements that were fixed on the legs and the knees that were made for stunts, but also I don't think it was the most comfortable outfit. I must admit, you try the best you can, can't you, for these things? But it's once you're in it, you weren't really kind of getting out of it particularly fast. So she was very patient with us with that process, and I think we probably had close to sort of 6, 7, 8 fittings on this particular outfit, for example.
And how is the budget for shows like this? I mean, do you feel comfortable? I mean, it's so hard to make things last minute and having the crew and enough painters and
Yeah,
overnights and all that stuff.
it's not easy, but I would say with this particular episode, I was, really supported in the budget, and they opened up the budget because I think the scale of this, as you can see, it needed to feel like it was quite special,
Very
and it was a 90-minute special, and so it needed to feel like kind of movie standards essentially. So the budget was, yeah, it was good on this. I had big teams, 3 different making teams, one cosprop team, 2
wow.
separate making teams. But as you know, when you're short on time, it doesn't necessarily matter how many people you've got. If you're short on time, you're short on time, aren't you? So, but they were incredible, and I was definitely supported budget wise for sure.
I mean, what would you say was your biggest challenge?
Well, apart from time, I think actually the helmets were the largest challenge actually in the end, because they needed to be practical. And I went to some of the largest sort of companies out of Pinewood and Shepperton and those places and showed them the drawings and on my 7-week prep, and they were like, "You're going to need like 3 or 4 months. So you've already missed the target." I was like, "Oh, okay, right. I'll just leave then." So that was a process of like, how are we really going to make these that look kind of the standard we need them to do in the time that we've got? And again, our brilliant sort of cosprop team came up with a solution for that, and they sculpted them. And they did move. They were on elastic bands, but they could press the button and they did go up. But they were just restricted in that sense. But I was just so happy with how they came out in the end, because I think they looked brilliantly made in the end, and that's kudos to those guys, really.
Oh, amazing. I mean, I'm so impressed. Textures and the colors and how it reflects the characters, how you are in the different worlds. It was just really, really stunning and spectacular. And I've worked on TV shows. Again, I understand the time crunch so much. It's a lot of characters to dress.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, and with those, going back to those helmets as well, we ended up spraying the visors at the local car lot because it was the last thing that we had to get done, basically. And we couldn't get it done at these sort of more professional places. So the VFX guy James said, let's go down the local car lots and let's just have a look at some of the sprays they use for cars. And
Wow.
that's how we ended up getting that, which the actors could see through a little bit and run, and then there was no reflection for camera, or little reflection for camera. So you sort of have to use these DIY kind of
I love that.
aspects sometimes, don't you? Really?
I'm just so impressed, and I'm so happy we get to talk about it because I think people, they don't know what goes into it, how much in such a short time. And
Mm.
the creativity is just always to me the best. And there's so much kind of art involved, and thinking and collaborating. I mean, I love that you with the production designer, the hair and makeup. I mean, this is kind of, to me, it really shows on screen. It really kind of that effort that everybody's on the same wavelength in a way, creative wavelength.
I mean, we all had the same ambition on this for sure, and I think it really helped that we'd worked together previously before, and we had a good shorthand with Stefan, the DOP, and Lucy had worked with a load of times, and the same with Toby, the director. So, and the same with the producers as well, actually. So we were very tight in that sense. I know a lot of people always say it was a true collaboration, but this really was actually.
Yeah, I love the lighting too. I think the lighting was really, really great.
Yeah, he's brilliant, Stefan. Yeah, he just makes it so exciting every time I work with him. It's fantastic.
And there's just depth, and there's always light, the reflections, and it again distinction of the worlds, and then you supporting it, I think, with color was really great. It was so alive everywhere you looked.
Yeah, I mean, you don't often get these types of projects, do you? So it was sort of, such an opportunity to really go there in that sense. And so, in a way, once we started delving into the game aesthetic, and I'm not from a gaming aesthetic either, and nor was a few of the HODs actually. But once you sort of start to pick that up in research, then there's sort of no way back in that sense, really. You kind of have to inject it, I think. I think if we hadn't, it just wouldn't have worked so much,
It just wouldn't be fun.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And in a way, I mean, the game is the fun part, for everybody, whoever is involved, and even
Exactly.
for us.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Right at the start, as a sort of a research thing, because I wasn't from a world of sort of gaming in that sense, we ended up going to the history of gaming exhibition that just happened to be on in London at the time. So we sort of went back to the first games in the 1970s and started to look at kind of, remember those sort of like almost those tennis games with two little bats and just like a ball in between, and just
Okay.
start to kind of break down and find out about the aesthetic of the gaming worlds. Really, I think costume design is always the most fun in the research part, isn't it? Really, it's just no matter what the sort of the genre is, it's always that research part that is just so exciting and fascinating, and what you learn at the end of it. So
And then how you twist it.
yeah, exactly. You give it your own stamp, don't you? Yeah, yeah. And then by the end, you can't quite remember how you got there. You're sort of like, how did we end up here? I must say, the first time I saw this, we just breathed a big sigh of relief, the costume team and everybody actually, and just thought, wow, we're so proud of what we made actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful show. It's one of those shows that consistently is really brings it on. Bravo.
Thank you so much.
Is there a show or film series that kind of really inspired you when you embark on your career?
Yeah, I mean, actually, what inspired me was Shane Meadows, the director, actually.
Oh,
So a totally different style. I'd always been into sort of naturalistic films, and I loved his early films basically. And I'd always been into sort of like a lot of sort of naturalistic street photography. Yeah, so I sort of came into it through that actually, and I'm still kind of fascinated with that sort of social realist sort of side to filmmaking. I'm
right.
really fascinated on.
Right. I love that because you have a very varied resume in a way. I think there's different kind of genres. So is there a certain genre that you particularly like more of the realistic type of thing, or you just want to play?
I just sort of want to play, actually. Yeah, yeah. When I was
I like that too, yeah.
when I was a bit younger, I was a bit more. I wanted to sort of curate into that social realist world, and actually, the further I've gone along, the more I want to be challenged, actually, and
Right.
that's why I felt so lucky to be asked to A, do Black Mirror a few years ago, and B, then when they asked me to do the sci-fi one, I was really honoured because I don't have anything on my resume that points towards me doing that. But I think it's design is design, isn't it? So it's what you bring to it.
Yeah. And I think the team around you too, like the people that give you the juice and the director and so I think that also.
Exactly, exactly. And I would say just like more than that, it doesn't really matter what world you're in. I would still want it to feel grounded in some way and kind of believable. Even if it's fantastical, I still want it to, resonate in that sense. So
Always, because I think it always has to feel authentic, no matter
yeah,
what. Yeah. And
yeah, exactly,
you
exactly.
want to know these people. You want to feel these people and who they are. You don't want the costume wearing them in a way. I
No,
think
no, no, exactly, exactly. So
so.
yeah, I would say good old Shane Meadows. Yeah.
If you could choose one historical figure to dress or design as a character on screen, who would it be?
One historical figure.
Yes.
That's a tough one. But it would probably be like Genghis Khan.
Interesting. Ooh.
just because that would sort of be quite interesting to kind of do a sort of not a modern day version of it, but interpretation of that style of. I think that era is sort of really fascinating, actually.
God, so layered and so kind of practical and strange and yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
exactly. There's something quite exotic about that time in a way. So I might go a bit Genghis Khan. Yeah,
Again, diving into the research, always cool. Would be really fun to kind of learn about that world, you know.
exactly, exactly. Yeah,
It's been so fun, kind of diving into the world of your brain, creative brain. It's just been such a pleasure, Matt. It's just lovely to meet you.
yeah. Lovely to meet you.
Hopefully get to meet in person if you're in LA or I'm in London
I
would
love that. Yeah, yeah.
and keep inspiring us.
Thank you. You
We'll
too.
be watching. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.